So this evening, we're going to talk about abstracting and transcribing uh, genealogy records. There will be no handout this evening. However, this lecture will be recorded. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them best I can at the end. If you have any further questions, my contact information will be at the end on the last slide. If you don't obtain it from there, you can obtain it from the Historical Society and they will get in touch with me. What is the difference between abstracting and transcribing records? Abstracting records, you include names, dates, places, tracts of land, specific items. What you do not include is the normal legal terminology that you see in different types of records. For example, type of language would be in the name of God, I so-and-so do make this will and testament, those type of languages. Also the word bequeath, you would include the person's name and so forth, that type of information. When you're transcribing or extracting a document, you're including everything word for word that basically is written. So those are the two basic, two areas of difference between a abstracting and transcribing of records. The next part of this is the grammar. Through the different centuries, 18th and 19th century, and even before in the 17th and 16th century, with the grammar has changed over time. And what we try to do when we're abstracting or transcribing the information is we write it as we see it. Even though when we look at it, we know that it's incorrectly written under today's standards, we write it as we see it. And what we try to do is in some of the abstracts, or even some of the transcriptions, if it's very unrecognizable, we write the letters SIC. And that basically says, that's what it says, even though it doesn't entirely, may not be a word today, or it may be a word that is totally illegible, that it may be something completely different and they just spelled it a certain way. Or it could be that the person is illiterate and they're writing how they are. That also helps you when you're abstracting or transcribing a document. Basically, it's telling the reader that what type of person that you're learning about. Are they illiterate? Are they not illiterate? Are they able to sign their name? Are they not allowed, or can they not sign their name and they're writing, are they marking their with an X? It says a lot about a person, especially with different periods of time. Why is abstracting or transcribing genealogy records important? There's a lot of information within these records. Genealogy records could be a will, could be an obituary, a marriage record, a newspaper announcement for a marriage, could be a land deed. Any sorts of records that we usually use when we're doing genealogy research is very important, because there may be indexes to these types of records that only give you an index to, say, the decedent's name, or the person handling the estate, the administrator, or the grantee and the grantor. But there may be other people's names within these documents that are not indexed. And that's why it's very beneficial to abstract or transcribe this information. What types of records are important to a genealogist to be either abstracted or transcribed? I'm going to list a few here. With African-American records, we have bills of sale, we have certificates of freedom, and Manga Missions. We have church records, baptism, church minutes, marriage records, and burial records. Also confirmations and sacrament records. Why I wrote church minutes on here, for example, with the Quaker religion, one of the big items is the minutes of the Quaker Church. You have where they're omitting or removing people from membership. You have the certificates of removal in those minutes. Also in other churches, you have the vestry minutes about someone serving as a vestryman. The other important things that are involved. With court records, you have chancery records, deeds, divorces, equity records, inquisition records, land commissions, marriage contracts. Then you have probate records that cover administration accounts, distributions, guardian accounts, inventories, and wills, and then, of course, vital records. All these types of records are very vital to either abstracting or transcribing.
Chris,
Yes,
make sure everybody's admitted to the meeting.
yes, I've been doing that as they come across the screen. The next section I'm going to show is examples of abstracting. The following document is a distribution of Andrew McAdowell, which was a Harford County distribution case that was filed. And on the right side is a blow up of the document and the information that was recorded by the clerk, by the Register of Wills inside the record book of the distribution of his estate. As you can see, there's quite a few pieces of information that is included. The list of his heirs.
Continue. Okay, gracias.
Would you
As well
please
as-
mute yourself if you haven't muted already?
As well as the information that includes their the pay that they ended up receiving. When abstracting this information, the information that is vital is the name of the person, the decedent, the person handling the case, whether they're the executor or the administrator, as well as the names of the heirs or the legatees and the date that this item was recorded. This next slide shows the abstract of the above case that I've just shown, of how I basically abstracted the information from that record. Now, you didn't need to include everything, but this is the pertinent information that I used when I abstracted this in a journal that I did last year, genealogy journal I did last year. And so that way the reader could find information within this record, but then they could still go back and look at the original. The next abstracted record is the original is the will of Lovering Merritt of Kent County. And as you can see, and I'll place my mouse over top of it, Lovering Merritt's will starts on this page, goes down the whole side, and then carries on to the next page, and then stops over on this fourth page. So it's a pretty lengthy will. However, you do not need to, unless you want to transcribe the entire document, if you just want to abstract the vital information out of it, the bequests, the names of the parties, the decedent, the person handling the estate, the witnesses, the date the will was written, the date that it was probated, is basically the vital information that you need to include. And also any other vital keys to maybe something specific that someone's getting, for example, a watch or a piece of property. What's the name of the piece of property? Is that included? Sometimes you want to include the money values of what people are getting. So it basically shows you that a difference between one child over another. One's getting property where one's only getting $1. Well, why is he only getting $1? Was he the least favorite son? So as this will was published in a publication in Abstracted to Kent County Wills by Chris Christo and John Barnhauser several years ago. And the way that Mr. Christo had abstracted the information, he was a little more detailed than some people would do with their abstracting. But it was enough information that you're able to piece together your family relationships, in a little more detail as towards what the people were actually receiving. Now, this volume that he did covered several volumes of wills from Kent County up to 1816, and then he also did a second volume up to 1867. So he did 90 years of wills, and that was anywhere from 4 to 5 libers in each book. So instead of transcribing it where it would be a lot lengthier, these were abstracted where you can cover a lot more material. The next abstracted item that I've included here is a land record. This land record was the first land records that were filed in Baltimore County in 1661. And as you can see, when they were abstracted by Mr. Davis a number of years ago, he chose to be very brief with what he included. What he did not include was tracts of names. What he did not include sometimes was locations. Basically included a date and the names, and at times witnesses, and that's about it. So he was able to cover a lot more time than other people with abstracts. So some of these deeds could be a lot more lengthier than other ones were. The other thing is what you do not see that you saw in Mr. Christos' abstracts is these do not include page numbers in his abstracts. So if you were to abstract something, it's very vital to write down what page number you got it from, also what set of books that you got it from. We do have several sets of books in the state of Maryland. Here in Harford County, we have at least three sets of probate books, different types of, whether it's a will book at the county level versus the same will book at the state level, the Maryland Archives, versus another version that's displaying now on Family Search. So, and sometimes the indexes are off as well. So it's very vital to write down where you pulled the record from. The fourth abstracted case is part of a 54-page equity file that was filed here in Harford County back in the 1800s, and this was over the estate of a guy named John McFadden. And basically it was his one of his children and her husband versus the other members of the family. And what I'm showing here is basically the bill of complaint, all the parties involved. Now, even though that record went for 54 pages, this document alone within that case basically names everyone involved. What it doesn't have involved in this document is basically, for example, like the lawyers' names, but everybody, all the key family members that are involved with it are in here. What also is not on here is, say, for example, someone gave a deposition. Those may be the other pieces of paper that you want to put in your abstract as well. So those type of things are very vital. This record itself is now housed at the Maryland State Archives. These are not at the county court. However, the index to this record is still sitting at the county court, which you would need the case number in order to pull the actual case. Now, some of these equity files could be anywhere from 50 pages, 20 pages, several hundred pages. And the last abstracted item that I've used tonight is, for example, a marriage or death announcement in the Baltimore Sun. And this was actually the first issue of the Baltimore Sun, one of the first issues that was recorded in May of 1837 when the Baltimore Sun was first established. And what you have here at the top is a marriage announcement, and then below that are the deaths. And when you're indexing or you're abstracting information, some people like to be as brief as possible. Other ones like to be a little more detailed with their information. We do have people that have created indexes to these types of things. And what they would do is include the names of the parties, the date of the marriage, and the date and the page number that the item was in the paper. And that's basically a one-liner. Now, some of these items may down the road get more lengthier than other ones, but if you want to be as brief as possible, because you still want the person to go back to the actual record and review it, especially to make sure things were spelled correctly. Maybe a transcription was done wrong. We've had cases, for example, on the desk on the second one with Emma Matilda Whitley, for example, someone doing an abstract may mistakenly forget that it actually says youngest daughter and leave out the youngest word and just put daughter of. And that could be a very vital piece of information, having that, or the last one where it says infant daughter and just leave out the word infant and just say daughter, and that could be another item, or leave out the actual ages. And that could be also vital if you're looking for someone and assuming maybe the mother has the same name and you're assuming that it may be the mother, and then go back and realize that it was actually a child and not an adult. So these types of things are very vital when looking the information up, and especially going back to the original. The next items I'm going to go over, and this is the last part of it, is the transcriptions. And what I'm going to do is give examples of different types of transcriptions, showing the items of what they look like, the length of them, and basically the volume of laying it out. The first item is a will for Charles Anderson that was filed in Baltimore County in the 1730s. probate in 1740. This will was actually re-recorded in Baltimore County, in the Baltimore County wills. There's also another copy of this that is in the Provincial Court of Maryland that ran from 1634 to 1777. So there's another set to this in a different handwriting. So this is actually a court copy. So this writing may be completely different than what the other copy looks like. Now, one researcher may want to compare what's written in this one versus another to make sure everything is consistent. To the right, we have exactly what was written and how it was laid out. And sometimes when you're doing these types of transcriptions and later want to abstract the information, sometimes it may be beneficial for some researchers, if they have the time, to actually transcribe the document and then go back and actually strike out the court language, and there you basically have your abstract, and can do it that way as well if you have the time, or you just turn around and just do an abstract if you want to and pull out the key information. This next item is, of course, as you can see, is a family Bible. And what we try to do when we're transcribing a family Bible, we write it as we see it. This is not one of those things that you want to abstract. You want to basically transcribe it exactly as you see it, word for word. And also, if there is a title page, you want to include the title of the Bible, the printer of the Bible, and the year that the Bible was copyrighted. Also, to see if there's anything in the front where it actually says who actually was the original possessor of the Bible, as well as the current owner of the Bible. And then you go into basically what is written word for word in the family registry. And what we try to do is write this exactly as we see it, even if the words are spelled wrong. The next item is an inquest of William Baxter that was filed in, I believe, in the 1700s here in Harford County. And what this was this was an inquest done on the body of William Baxter, who was struck by his brother Jacob Baxter and killed. And this was the inquest where it lists his cause of death. It lists the time frame of when he was killed. Sometimes some of these actually have the actual day, as well as who served as the coroner, as well as the people that served on the inquest. So a lot of this is beneficial, and these were recorded. This was actually recorded in the land records. We have these types of records starting in 1782. They're very sparse for a period of years. And then as we get to the Civil War, these records are then part of the chattel records, which is held by the clerk of the court in the circuit court. So these records are few and far between in some counties. Some counties have different other ways of recording these type of records, but these are actually mixed in with the actual land records. So this is before we actually have death records. So these records are very beneficial to a researcher, not knowing that there is actually a record of the person dying if there was an inquest ever done on the person. So these are very minimal items written. So usually they're a page to a half a page to a page and a half. So you can really transcribe it rather than abstracting it, and or abstract it if you wish. And it still holds a lot of information, not only when the person dies, well, besides the people involved, but then historically, it also helps you. For example, if one of your ancestors is one of the people serving on this committee as a coroner inquest, it basically proves that your ancestor was alive and in a specific place at a specific time. The next item was a deposition, two depositions that were done that involved an actual court case, which was John Green against Samuel Durham. And these were actually two of my relatives. And this was over a dispute. However, this was over a piece of property, and within the document were depositions, and these were recorded in the land records. And in these depositions gave family relationships of who was the daughter of so-and-so, who was the son of so-and-so, who was alive at a specific point in time. And also this one also gives even what the person, the one, Elizabeth Bond, who was actually originally Elizabeth Scott, the daughter of Daniel Scott, whose father was in the House of Delegates here in Maryland. It actually gave his actual political service, as well as her grandfather, who was Daniel Scott, who was born in the 1650s. So it gives you 3 generations within a land record in a deposition in firsthand account. So these type of items are very scarce, especially when you're doing 18th and 19th century. You actually have firsthand accounts of actually different things that you can use for different reasons. And these type of records you would transcribe versus abstracting, but you still want to be able to put down exactly where you got it from if they need to go pull the originals. And the last transcription, transcribing document that I've included here is 2 Manga Missions. And these were actually done in the first land record book that was ever recorded in Harford County. That was in 1774. And these were two records. And usually what we do with those is we transcribe these records, and we actually have some of these items, we actually have originals at the Historical Society in Harford County, at the Historical Society. And these are the corpse copies that were placed inside the land record books. If you were to look in the land record indexes today, you will not find these. You actually have to go through each land record library in the front of the library to actually find these entries recorded. So, and these type of things, we would include transcriptions rather than abstracts, because they hold a lot of valuable information of not only the people manumitting the individuals, but also someone want to mute their mic, please? But also the information that previous to that of who actually owned these people, and it gives you a little bit about the history and stuff, and be able to trace that information, or what document that they used, whether it was a will or a deed or whichever document, and we're able to track that information. As I said before, one of the rules to remember when you're abstracting or transcribing documents is to always review the originals. Countless and countless times over the last 30 some years that I've done research, especially looking at either of these type of documents, either abstracted or transcribing, I found countless errors in things. And sometimes it could be the way that the person abstracting the stuff, it could be just a simple mistake, or it could be just the way that they decided to abstract that information. They're actually missing out key information. There was one instance where we had an individual that was just listing the children of a decedent from a will, but what they were neglecting to list was it actually named the husbands to his married daughters, and the husbands' names were actually listed in the will. So for years, the person assumed that it just listed the daughters with no husband's names and never bothered to go back and copy the original, get a copy of the original will. So, and right there was information all along that if the person would have taken the extra time, it could have been solved. So always, always, always review the original record if it can be found. 9 times out of 10, it can be found. For those of you that are retired, that have extra few hours or want to make a second income. Now, this is not a money maker, 6-figure money maker. I've written several books over the years, abstracted several sets of records, but for those of you looking for something extra to do, there's thousands and thousands, millions and millions of records out there all over the United States that have never been abstracted or transcribed that would be helpful to genealogists across the country, across the world, whether you put it in book form, whether you put it on a blog, on a website, or whatever. Someone trying to get a record here that's sitting in a safe, and the person sitting in California, but it's never been microfilmed or anything, it's still sitting in a safe. So that type of information may be beneficial to someone. So so if you're looking for something extra to do, this is the type of work that may be beneficial for those of you that are interested in doing this type of abstracting or transcribing. Below is a link and a publication. The first link, the link is a more detailed version of transcribing, extracting, and abstracting genealogy documents. That is a course that is done by the National Genealogical Society, and that's a paid course. I believe it's $75. And the other item is a publication called Professional Genealogy Preparation Practice and Standards. It's written in 2018 by Elizabeth Schoen Mills, and that's actually the second edition that she's actually written. She wrote one previous to that, and that's actually the second version that was written. And that has a wide variety of things written in it besides abstracting and transcribing. So it's a lot of other things in there that it talks about as well besides that. So where to look for books on abstracting and transcribed records. And what I mean by this is look to see if there's any records abstracted or transcribed on an area that you're doing research in. For example, are there records on wills in Berks County, Pennsylvania, or Arlington, Virginia, or Savannah, Georgia, or wherever where you're doing research? Heritage Books is probably one of the largest genealogy bookstores. They're actually web-based now. They don't have a store anymore. They were originally out of Westminster, Maryland. They're now, they have a satellite in Briar Heights, Maryland. They have no storefront, no nothing. It's all online based. They also have a place out in North Carolina. Also GPC, which is out of Baltimore. They have no storefront anymore. It used to be on Calvert Street in Baltimore. They've been around for, I believe, over 50 years. Also, the New England Historic Geological Society in Boston, they do have a building and a library there in Boston. If you're looking for New England material, also you want to look at your local and state geological societies to see if they're doing publications. I know we did 2 publications a year for the local geological society that we had here in Harford County for 35 years until they disbanded. Those were anywhere from 20 to 30 page booklets, and we still have those for sale through the Historical Society. You go on our website under the books, under the store, and should be items there that we had. So with that, let's see here. I think it's starting to freeze up on me. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to answer any questions that anybody had. I believe the one question is, were there any handouts? And I talked about that before. There are no handouts. Anybody have any? This will be on YouTube, so you'll be able to, on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to preview it probably within the next few days on YouTube. So you'll be able to view it at your leisure, and then be able to stop and start it as you go along to get the information.
Chris,
Yeah,
actually, everybody that registered for tonight's lecture will receive an email with the link to the YouTube video of this evening.
okay. So, and then there is my contact information. And I'll leave that up there as the last slide. For those that you want to get a hold of me, I do work for a living. So if I don't get back to you within, I usually get back to people within this 24 hours. So besides doing this type of research and lectures and things. So, so if you're looking for a speaker or need help with research, feel free to contact me, either through here or through the Historical Society. Anyone have any questions? You can either put your questions in the chat box or unmute your mic.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
First of all, I apologize for being late. They've got the police department off cordoned off. That, you know, I don't know if they got a bomb threat or what, but that put me late. But my question is, does your video talk about oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank now. The instances where you would abstract and where you transcribe, and you know, which is better? Or
What
I guess, go ahead.
what I talk about more is basically I give a brief explanation of what the different types of things you would transcribe versus you would
Okay.
transcribe everything, but abstracting, it's basically the key information is what I talked about, the key things out of it, and the names, the dates, the places,
Okay.
the constant written verbiage that you usually see in a document, like in a will, the normal court language that you see from one paragraph to the next, you basically strike that information out. You do not include that. Unless there's something specific that you don't normally see, then include it. Also, what the people are getting. If they're getting something that's piece of jewelry, money, they're getting a cow, whether you want to go to that detail. But sometimes we've had instances where we had an instance here in Harford County where there was a piece of jewelry that went through 200 years of wills of how it was carried down through a family. We also had a set of portraits that were carried down through wills from one generation to the next. And actually one of the earlier wills actually said who painted the portraits. So we were able to carry it through wills, got it down to more recent period of time, and then found a relative and said, who got this? Because they knew the person that the last will was written. And we finally said, okay, who ended up getting this after so-and-so died? And we were able to track it down. So, and we actually knew more about the chain of custody than they did.
But when I'm doing doing my own research and I see something, well, I just sit there and say, okay, I'm going to do this abstraction, and then I'm going to put like citations and then cite where I found it, so that way if anybody else was looking at it, wanted to double check my abstraction, they could look at that, that citation and go back to it to see whether one, I abstracted it correctly.
Correct. And
Right.
Correct. And what would happen, like, for example, if the individual is deciding to join, say, for example, the Daughters of the American Revolution, what would be beneficial is to not only have your extraction, but also the original document, because they want to see both. They may not be, that genealogist sitting at the DAR headquarters in Washington may not be able to correctly read the handwritten document, but they still want to see it. But that extraction that you've done is going to help them a whole heck of a lot, and helpful that you may get that person's application passed a lot quicker than them having to send the thing back because they didn't have a transcription done because the lettering was poor.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I can't get into DAR because my grandfather doesn't have a birth certificate, and we don't know when he died. He just fell off the face of the earth. But this way, what I would do is, let's say I found something for the DAR. I could take, and since I don't have the original document, can't get a hold of it, then I could like do a transcription, transcribe it perfectly, and then on top of that, do an abstraction and include those two to DAR. That was you're basically telling me?
Right. Basically, you're doing that, and then you basically have to certify that or notarize that that's what it actually says. We do that with, for example, with family Bibles. If the copies of the Bible cannot be included, the actual original, then we would type up a certified, type of a notarized statement saying that this was what was written in the Bible, and then it's notarized. So
Okay.
in your case with your grandfather, with DAR, you have to prove the first 3 generations with DAR. However, if the record is not available and it's one of their requirements, usually what happens is your registrar for your DAR chapter would have to write a letter to the National Society explaining what has happened, basically in lieu of why it cannot be found. We do this with other groups as well.
Oh, that's extremely helpful. Thank you. Yeah, because I found a cousin, and the cousin, when they come up to the line, is like, it would be her grandmother is the sister of my grandfather.
Mhm.
They both had the same mother, but she was born in California. My great aunt was born in California, so she's got a birth certificate. My grandfather was born in Oregon, and he doesn't have a birth certificate. And he fell off the face of the earth, and no one knows where he died. He was a millionaire, but he drank it all away.
Okay. So basically what we would do is write they would send a note basically stating what was checked, why it wasn't found, and they would write like an affidavit or a notarized statement explaining what had happened. And because we do this with I'm involved with the Children of the American Revolution. I've been there involved with that for 25 years, as well as the Sons of the American Revolution. And there's times where you have custody issues where people don't want to hand over documents and that are asked for. And we just basically have to write a note saying we can't get it. So let me move on to.
Yeah, well, the thing is, yeah, my cousin was able to get into DAR.
Mhm.
Now, the thing is, if I can show that my grandfather was the brother of her grandmother, or however that is, but
Correct.
that the two of them are brother and sister,
Correct.
and that they've been through all these things together, then maybe I can get in that way.
Right. The other thing is what you look for is the last document that you can find involving your grandfather, tying it to the aunt, as well as what's the last document you can find on him, actual that you know that it's actually him. I had a case where a guy had 3 different social security numbers, and he was running around getting married to women, getting divorced because he's a bigamist, and running around getting 3 different social security numbers. And this was at a time where now it was before a time where they were actually recycling social security numbers. And
Oh my goodness.
so there's actually living people with one of these numbers. So that actually was originally granted to him. And the only way that was granted to a living person today is because there were no claims put on that original social security number. So that's the other thing that anybody tried to get a social security number back in the 30s did not have a birth certificate. They had to go and file for a delayed birth certificate in the area where they were from. So that may be something else that you want to look for too.
So if he's in California, but he was born in Oregon, he would contact Oregon? Because
Yeah.
I see,
It would be you filed in Oregon in the county of which that's if he was still living as of 1937, 36 or 37 when they first created the Social Security Administration. He would need to have a birth certificate or proof of age in order to get a Social Security card under the federal government.
yeah, because I see that he had a social security number, because he was born one name, and then out of the blue, his mother changed his name.
Right. So then basically you would have a name change. However, under the current federal statute, you do not need to have, if you have nothing against yourself, you can go and change your name without legally doing it.
I tell you, I'm going to email him, but he can't hide. I'm going to find him. I can go all the way back to like 16 something, but I can't find my grandfather.
The other thing is, email me because I can talk about other things that you can do with that Social Security. Have you pulled his SS5 application?
Well, I went and I got the other one. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, and I got the little short one, the NDIV or whatever that was. So I got to go back and submit for the other one. They just gave me the short one. I didn't wanted a copy of his application.
Right, you want the original handwritten one that he signed himself. That's the one that you want.
Right, right. It said that, I mean, he's not on the 1940 census, yet he was mentioned in his sister's funeral notice,
Right.
saying it's, you know, survived by. So he was somewhere in California in 1952.
Right, and the death indexes for California, I believe, go up to the 1990s, I believe now. So.
And he's not in there at all.
Right, and trying to get vital records out of California right now with the way they have their state statutes is like, good luck.
I'll go.
Let's move on to another question, Chris.
Okay, all right,
Sorry, Chris, thank you.
Chris, this is Rhonda Hurt in Atlanta. And I found you guys because Harford County kept such good records. Ancestry pulled my mother and her family up. My mother died when I was 4 years old. So I'm hoping that you could just point me in the right direction for Harford County in how to access those vital records and church records that you just mentioned, because I have the census, the 1940 census from Ancestry. So I'm hoping if I can email you, you'll be able to at least point me in the right direction.
right, yeah, email me and I can talk with you one-on-one on different, because there's things in multiple different places, not just still sitting here in the county. So things have been moved to Annapolis. Also, if there's adoptions involved, there's also other statutes with that. We can possibly unseal those records as well, if it's before 1947.
Okay.
Okay. One of the questions that was typed was, can you extend your remarks to describe how to deal with records in foreign language, translating church records, specific Catholic, that are in Latin. And this individual was Jim Schubb, who I know. Records in foreign languages, especially church records written in Latin, probably one of the best tools that we have available to us is the wiki website with Family Search that talks about the different foreign languages and the terminology that's used within the different church records. For example, like Catholic records, different words that they were using. Also, if it's, that's where I would go for the Latin information. Also, that also helps with people abstracting 16th century wills from England and other areas. Also, if the language is in something else, for example, German, we have different German websites that we use, as well as there's Facebook pages. For example, the Deutsche Correspondent newspaper out of Baltimore that's written in the German script. That's a little tricky to do. There's people in there that can help you with that. There's also the Google Translator feature free on Google that can help with other languages. Probably one of the toughest areas is the Pennsylvania Dutch language wills from eastern part of Pennsylvania. However, what they also do is shorthand. So
Oh,
the mixture of the shorthand and a mixture of the Pennsylvania Dutch all in one. Those are very tricky to do as well. But those would be the areas. It's the family search, genealogy wiki website that I would use, and you can put that into Google, into your search engine, and that should come up. And I would also add Latin church records as well. Latin is not something that's taught anymore in a lot of the schools. Maybe some in Catholic schools, but not in public schools, or it's not a language offered. Anyone else have any questions? Going once, going twice. So if anyone else has any questions that they'd rather email me directly, my email is there on the screen. Also, my cell phone number is there as well if you want to call me directly. Let me see if there's anything else.
The next lecture is going to be next month, and it's Skeletons in the Closet. The event is on the Historical Society's homepage, and I encourage you to register for that lecture. Mary will be doing her genealogy lecture about skeletons in your closet.
Chris, are you the owner of Library Thing?
No, that is a web-based website, and I just have an account on there. Basically, that my entry, my page on there basically lists probably about 3/4 of my library that I have here at home. There's probably another quarter of it that I do not have on there. So that's all the research books that I have. I believe it's over 200 some books.
Yeah, because I'm on Library Thing also, so I saw that.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
over 200. I have a very large Maryland collection. I also have Pennsylvania books. Also some other states as well.
Okay. You guys out there stay dry. I'm in California. So we're burning up out here and we're getting inundated with smoke. But you guys try to stay dry with all that rain out there.
Yeah, it's not raining today, so.
Well, the hurricanes, the hurricanes and.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. I'll be into contact with you. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
thank you, Chris.
Welcome.